There's a really good energy in this room today. I wonder why. It is Tuesday, February 28th, and I am going to call to order the Minnesota Education Finance Committee. It is 8:33, again, February 28th. We have a really great slate of bills this morning. A lot of it is it's all centered around resources for the communities and for students and for children, especially around libraries and museums, all kinds of great things that make our communities thrive and provide access to literature and music and arts and science, all of those things that build well-rounded children as well as well-rounded communities. So I am very excited to hear the testimony that we have in front of us and some of the bills. I'm going to start off the day with my own bill, Senate File 1919, and then we'll hear from the Minnesota Center for the Books, and then Children's Library, and then more museums and education centers to round out our day. So it looks like we're going to have a really great day. Appreciate everybody being here. And with that, I am going to turn over to my assistant chair here, and she's going to run the show.
All right, good morning. Senator Kunesh, whenever you're ready to begin.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Members, I would like to present to you this morning Senate File 1919, which looks at funding for regional public library system. I would like to make the motion for Senate File 1919 to be laid over for inclusion in our omnibus bill.
Senator Westland, do you want to make that motion?
So moved.
Thank you. And then I have a motion to adopt a technical author amendment, if that's all right. I have the A1 here. And it is just a basic cleanup of language and adds a paragraph, page 3 after line 11, a statement that the funds need to be used for activities associated with increasing the number of licensed library media specialists, and it goes on to explain that. So with that, I would ask you to accept my amendment.
Thank you, Senator Kunesh. Any discussion on the amendment? All right, seeing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. You may proceed.
Great. So Minnesota has a long history of supporting library services through various regional library systems. These systems serve public, special, and school libraries. State funding helps expand services for lifelong learners in our communities by increasing access to vital technology and broadband. These funds foster coordination and cooperation across the state. So Minnesotans are well served by libraries with sufficient resources and the hours of operation. This bill proposes to increase funding to the 12 regional public library systems by $4 million each year and amends the distribution formula to create more stability and equity across the public regions. The bill increases the multi-county, multi-type library system funding by $700,000 to increase their ability to provide professional development and support libraries in all systems. And lastly, the bill will provide a one-time grant aimed at increasing the numbers of licensed library media specialists working in our schools. The demand for library services is steady and increasing. Citizens of all ages rely on public libraries for lifelong learning, literacy, digital literacy, job placement, and so much more. We have 4 testifiers that are here with us today. One is from a regional library, another from our local Anoka County Library. Of course, we need to have a library media specialist speak to it. And we have 2 of them. So with that, if you are prepared, we will start with our testifiers.
Thank you, Senator Kunesh. Whoever is going first, I believe we have Liz Lynch. If you could introduce yourself, state your name for the record, make sure you sign in, and then begin when ready. Thanks.
Okay, thank you so much. Good morning, Chair Gustafson and members of the committee, and thank you, Senator Kunesh, for introducing SF 1919. Very much appreciated. My name is Liz Lynch. I am the director of the Lake Agassiz Regional Library System, and I'm also currently serving as the Minnesota Library Association's legislative co-chair. Thank you for this opportunity to advocate for SF 1919, a critical bill supporting public library services across this state. The regional public library systems are requesting an increase of $4 million for regional library basic system support, or what we call RLBSS, with future increases indexed to the basic education allowance. We are also seeking an adjustment to the formula used to allocate the funds statewide and the ability to use population figures available April 1st for the RLBSS calculations. I realize that this is a lot of detail, so I will attempt to break it down a bit. I am here representing rural libraries, and I can tell you from experience, public libraries are fulfilling needs that other institutions cannot. Books might be our bread and butter, but we are really in the business of improving lifelong learning for all. Unfortunately, libraries are continually asked to do more with less. We are seeking a $4 million increase in funding statewide because libraries, a part of the Department of Education, have not seen an increase in state funding since 2008. Operating costs have gone up significantly over the past 15 years. A $4 million increase in funding would help improve communities in so many ways, and it is critical in the retention, training, and support of library employees who are meeting new and different challenges working with the public each and every day. In addition, tying future increases to the basic education allowance will ensure that library funding is sustained for years to come and will allow us to meet the ever-growing needs of our community members. The boards of all 12 regional public library systems are also requesting an adjustment to the formula used to distribute the funds by simply increasing the basic factor and reducing the equalization factor. All 12 regional public library systems would experience more stability and less volatility from year to year and would avoid large swings in funding from year to year. Over the years, regions have unexpectedly lost up to $100,000, making the budgeting process very difficult. Finally, regarding the RLBSS calculations and the regional public library system budgeting process, we are asking to use population figures that are available April 1st for the RLBSS calculations, rather than waiting to receive the numbers from the State Demographer's Office in August. We create our budgets in the spring and would appreciate being able to actually build budgets based on actual numbers versus anticipated numbers. We are librarians and we are problem solvers. We are coming to you with a solution to help sustain and improve public libraries for Minnesotans. The proposed changes have been approved by the Minnesota Library Association, the Minnesota League of Cities, the Association of Minnesota Counties, and of course, the boards of all 12 regional public library systems, both rural and metro. Please support the proposed changes in SF 1919 so that librarians can continue to improve the quality of life for all lifelong learners in Minnesota. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Our next testifier is Sarah Hawkins. You may state your name for the record, begin when ready. Thank you.
Good morning, Madam Chair and members of the committee. Thank you, Senator Kunesh, for introducing this important library bill. My name is Sarah Hawkins. I am the other legislative co-chair for the Minnesota Library Association, and we are seeking your support for Senate File 1919 on behalf of our professional organization. I am also the Library Collections Manager for Anoka County Library, which is a member of the Regional Public Library System, MELSA, which serves the Twin Cities metro area. As part of the Department of Education, public libraries and the 12 regional public library systems play an important role in educating individuals in our state, no matter their age. These regional systems are responsible for strengthening, improving, and promoting public library services across the state. Because of this cooperation, Minnesota Public Libraries provide effective and quality services and resources from border to border. For Anoka, our regional system, MELSA, supports approximately 8% of our library budget in areas such as technology access, literacy and STEM initiatives, workforce readiness, and continuing education, including language learning, business research, and more. Funding from Regional Library Basic System Support, RLBSS, makes this possible. A highlight example of how RLBSS enhances library service in the metro is the Twin Cities Metro e-Library. If Anoka County Library were to have a digital collection on its own, our community would have access to approximately 30,000 ebook and e-audiobook titles. However, by the power of sharing from all metro public libraries, made possible by RLBSS, our users have access to almost 300,000 titles. And there's demand for more. The success of this collaboration shows. In 2022, there were over 9.6 million digital checkouts by more than 250,000 Metro Public Library users, making it the highest circulating shared digital collection worldwide. I'll say that again, we were the highest circulating shared digital collection worldwide. We're proud of the collaboration being done. Our titles are being used by K-12 students, homebound seniors, job seekers, and other lifelong learners. Recently, while working with our local food shelf partners to help connect their clients with library resources, we met a woman who was struggling to keep up with her community college classes. She could pay for tuition, but she didn't have access to the technology and books needed on top of that. The librarian introduced her to the digital library collection, and the student cried with visible relief when together they found several books needed to complete her coursework were available in the shared digital collection. She was so grateful. This is not an unusual story. Moments like this happen through Minnesota's public libraries every day. RLBSS is critical in the operation of regional public library systems, which is, in turn, critical for public library services statewide. Having worked in rural, suburban, and urban Minnesota libraries, I can attest that the changes proposed by Senate File 1919 are truly a statewide initiative. An increase in RLBSS would allow regional public libraries statewide to increase their already valuable community impact. Please support Senate File 1919. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Our next testifier is Ashley Dress from Southeast Library Systems. State your name whenever you are ready for the record, and then you can begin.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you. My name is Ashley Dress, and I work as the consultant for K-12 school libraries for the Southeast Library System, the multi-county, multi-type library system in the southeast corner of the state. With no budget increase in more than a decade, the multi-types are struggling to continue to serve the needs of our hundreds of academic, K-12 school, public, and special libraries that we serve. Our work is to build the capacity of our member libraries so that they can continue to do the amazing work that they do in the local communities that they serve. As an example, CELS was able to provide continuing education to library staff on diversifying their book collections while also providing funding for them to purchase books, impacting students on a local level. One member described to me how happy she was that her students could see themselves reflected on her shelves. CELS also offers consulting services to our member libraries on topics from collection development to policies to advocacy, but with only 2 part-time staff members working on this, these in-demand services can't reach all of our 120 members. These kinds of efforts are happening in all regions through the work of the multi-types. To continue to make these local impacts, though, the multi-types need an increase of $700,000 to our general operating budgets. With a budget increase to $2 million, the multi-types can continue to provide the high standard of service that we've always provided. We're also excited and energized by the potential for the $1 million in one-time funding to work towards increasing the number of media specialists in our schools. As Kim will talk about, we know that media specialists are imperative to the school ecosystem, but we also know that they are becoming increasingly rare. With the help of ARPA funds and with buy-in from media specialists from our region and from statewide, CELS was able to work with the Carlson Consulting Enterprise at the U of M to study the state of the school library in southeast Minnesota. And we found that 36% of our students do not have access to a media specialist at all. For every 505 students, there is 1 media specialist serving them. But that's only in our region, and we know that Hibbing may look different than Hayfield. With these funds, the multi-types could replicate and expand upon the work that CELS began, finding out where media specialists are working in the state, where information literacy skills are being taught, and by whom. A foundational study like this could provide the multi-types with actionable data, which will hopefully lead to an increase in media specialists in our schools. The 7 multi-county, multi-type library systems are uniquely positioned to facilitate this project as our organizations cover the entirety of the state, and we already exist to serve school libraries in our regions. In supporting the work of the multi-types, you're helping to support libraries of all types in the state of Minnesota. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Our last testifier, Kim Haugo. If I mispronounce your name, you're going to have to say it for the record anyways, so begin when you're ready. Thank you.
Madam Chair and members of the committee, my name is Kim Haugo. I'm the Library Media Specialist at Maple Grove Senior High, and I'm here on behalf of the Minnesota Library Association to ask your support for Senate File 1919. I'm a public school teacher holding both a classroom teacher and a media generalist licensure. I love what I do, and I've been a teacher since 1992. Most people have fond memories of their school library and class visits to check out books, but few understand the rigor and training of school librarians. In our preparatory classes, there are a wide variety of requirements, like understanding how to evaluate and select books for children and teens, learning strategies to teach research skills, including the importance of fact-checking. Preparation also includes learning to assess the educational value of software and online systems and how to teach others to use them, as well as learning how to foster the joy of reading via book talks and curating a collection of materials where all students find themselves represented. School media specialists are lifelong learners, a skill modeled each day for our students. Unfortunately, not every Minnesota K-12 student has a school librarian. State leadership needs to understand the fundamental role of licensed school media specialists, especially in this age of ever-present information flow. The school library is the heart of the school, and when led by a school media specialist, all students and all teachers have access to someone to teach the ethical use of information, a technology integrator, a leader trained in literacy, a computer science teacher, a curriculum developer, and a lesson plan collaborator. Every student in Minnesota needs access to such a teacher and resource. So I ask, do we want students to have access to age-appropriate resources, to be critical thinkers, to learn how to tell the difference between facts and information, to perform better on standardized tests, and to understand the importance of digital safety and wellness in today's social media world? Do we want teachers to have support integrating technology into their classroom and teaching partners? Then let's provide a pathway for more districts to staff a licensed school media specialist. They're licensed teachers trained to select age-appropriate resources for libraries and teach research skills. Their impact is far felt as research supports a positive correlation between a licensed school media specialist and standardized test scores. Media specialists stay up to date on tech trends such as AI's ChatGPT and share their knowledge with others in the learning community. And they collaborate with classroom teachers to teach Minnesota state standards. Thank you for your support of Senate File 1919, and thank you for your commitment to Minnesota scholars.
Thank you. Members, any questions? Senator Swazinski.
Thank you. Ms. Hawkins, when you were giving that statistic about 8 times that you want to make sure we retain, there was a bunch, you couldn't see the heads bobbing in the back in agreement with you. Thank you, Senator Kunesh, for bringing this bill forward. The library, whether it's a local public library or a school library, is such an important integral part of our intellectual growth as people. And it played a pivotal role in my life. And I wish my friend Steven Spielberg, we've never met, but I wish he would make a masterpiece of a film showing a young child walking into that library for the very first time, and the magic that takes place when you look at that pile of books on those shelves for their very first time. And with respect to when my kids were little, when we did a lot of camping, one of our goals was to visit all the state parks in Minnesota. We didn't accomplish that, but they loved rainy days because, and not because they didn't have to go outside and play in the forests and streams and lakes of Minnesota, but they knew that their mom and dad would be going to the local library, wherever it was, the closest library to the state park. And because that was, and thanks for bringing that memory back for me of us heading into the local town's library to spend a couple hours on a rainy day as a family. And hopefully I instilled in my children the love of books that I have. So thank you, Senator Kunesh, and I'm very proud to be a co-author on this bill.
Members, anyone else? Senator Verbaeten.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Senator Kunesh, for bringing forward the bill. I just wanted to say I love our libraries, and I have so many fond memories at the Roseville Library, which was part of Ramsey County's libraries. As a child, my sister and I would spend lots of hours there, and you can access so much more than books in our libraries, and there's great programming. I also want to give a shout out to St. Paul Public Libraries, who just does a fantastic job, and it was really exciting for me to find out that in our Education Finance Committee there is funding for our public library. So thank you for bringing forth the bill, and just want to voice my support.
Thank you. Any members, anyone else? All right, I was just going to ask a couple of quick questions. One, is the library system that you're talking about and looking for funding, is that also where the funding goes for the homework helper? Or I know it's connected, is that the same?
Each of our regions, there's 7 multi-county, multi-type library systems, and we each kind of do different things based on what our community needs are. So I believe one of the systems does provide support for funding that. CELS does not. Ours goes towards different programs based on what the needs of our members are.
Thank you. And it looks like, Ms. Hawkins, you had an answer to that?
I did, yeah. So in the metro, our regional public library system is, MELSA is the system that funds the homework help for us online. And there are other regions that host that as well. It's a service called Help Now. Yep.
Thank you. And I'm just going to say for everyone watching who's in the audience, maybe on the panel, or anybody who's got teenagers or middle schoolers, if you're not utilizing that homework helper as a parent, I'm telling you to go check it out today. It really is. I think everybody in the room, when you have kids, you can help them with their homework until they get to a certain grade. And then things get really, all of a sudden I'm trying to unlock that memory of how to do chemistry again. And the homework helpers are amazing. It is free. My daughter Isabel did really well with that, but she was also really shy, really introverted, and always had a hard time asking for help. But that homework helper just saved her. So thank you, props for that. And then also just to comment quickly, as somebody who's been a teacher for over a decade, the librarians in our schools are just, they're priceless. I mean, they instill a love of books. They're sort of a safe place for students to go during the day, and the same with our local libraries as well. And you just can come in as you are. You don't have to have a lot of money. You don't have to have any money. And you can come in, read a book, check out a movie, and it's great. So I appreciate the bill. And with that, I think, Senator Kunesh, do you have any closing remarks?
I do, and I appreciate all of the folks that came in to talk about libraries today. As you all know, I was a library media specialist in elementary and middle school for 20 years. And it's not just about books, and it's not just about technology and information, but it's about building relationships with kids as well. When I was in the elementary school, it was a kindergarten through fifth grade, and so I got to see those kids matriculate from kindergarten all the way through fifth grade. I got to know every single one of those kids. I could tell what kind of mood they were in the morning when they came to my library. And, you know, you start to build those relationships and help them build their reading lists and that sort of thing. And we talked about a little bit about collaborating with teachers, like doing reports on animals. Can you help us find resources? Will you pull the books on, you know, the latest weather situation, or can you help us find this or find that? And that was our job, and those are the things that we absolutely love to do. But the library is also, for a lot of kids, a safe haven. Just like you were talking about your daughter, who's maybe very shy and introverted. It's often a place where students feel safe and secure. And I can tell you, especially at the middle school, there were plenty of kids that, like at lunchtime, it was just so noisy in the lunchroom. It was just more than they could handle. And they'd say, can I come upstairs and eat my lunch in the library? And, you know, where can you take your lunch and eat around a bunch of books? But you could do that in my library. We also welcomed homeschoolers into our library. I had a number of families that would come once a week, and they'd drop off their books and check out new books, because they can do that. We serviced our local parochial schools as well. We had students that came in to maybe work with a speech pathologist or something, and they would sit in my library, and eventually they'd say, can we borrow some of these books? You know, so it's not just exclusive. You know, there's nothing about a library that is exclusive. And we heard about the lack of funding for way too long. And when we think about what has happened in the last few years with the pandemic and how people turn to their libraries, even if they couldn't go in. Remember, librarians often will pull those books, put them in a bag, and put them out for you to come pick up and drop off again. And so there are so many ways that our library systems, whether in schools or public or local or regional, are servicing our communities. And I think this is a beginning in that reinvestment and rebuilding the kind of information system that we want to have in our state. And I would ask for all of your support.
All right, thank you. With that, Senator Kunesh renews her motion to lay it over, and I will let her reclaim her seat.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, now we are ready for the next bill, Senate File 1196. Senator Seeberger, would you like to join us? Senator Seeberger. Let's see. Senator Swedzinski, would you like to make a motion?
So moved.
Thank you. Welcome to our committee, Senator Seeberger. If you would like to tell us a little bit about your bill, and we'd be happy to hear about it.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee. It is my honor to be here to present for your consideration Senate File 1196, which seeks appropriation for Minnesota Center for the Book. It is really special to me to be able to be the author of this legislation. As some of you may know, I am a licensed English language arts teacher in the state of Minnesota. I taught middle school and high school English for many, many years, and it's the favorite job I've ever had, the best job I've ever had. I miss it every day. I also want to acknowledge my appreciation for librarians and media specialists and public libraries throughout our state. I think they are community hubs. I think librarians are wizards. I think they are the unsung heroes of our society, and I'm so thrilled to be here today, celebrating those folks. The bill that I'm presenting to you requests $200,000 per year to the entity designated by the Library of Congress as its Center for the Book for the state of Minnesota. The Minnesota Center for the Book has received funding from the legislature since 2017, first through this committee's funding to the Minnesota Department of Education, and in 2021 through a 2-year legacy grant. The Minnesota Center for the Book again seeks funding through this committee and the Minnesota Department of Education because we believe is a better home for the center's work, which includes school-based residencies with writers and annual resources for teachers statewide. In Minnesota, our state Center for the Book is with the Friends of the St. Paul Public Library. They have held this role since 2011 and as such are responsible for producing programs and activities that promote books, reading, libraries, and literacy throughout the state. Minnesota is home to one of the country's most active centers for the book, and in 2021 piloted a program for the Library of Congress with the National Poet Laureate and the Fond du Lac Band of Lake Superior, Chippewa. With me is Beth Byrne, who will testify with regard to the Center for the Book and provide additional detail on all the cool things that it does.
Thank you, Senator. And we have, let's see, Ms. Burns, would you like to introduce yourself and then you may begin your testimony?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Senator Seeberger, for authoring this bill. My name is Beth Burns, and I have the privilege of serving as director for the Minnesota Center for the Book in my capacity as president of the Friends of the St. Paul Public Library. And as Senator Seeberger mentioned, the Library of Congress in Washington, D.C. designates one entity in every state and U.S. territory to serve as basically its state chapter. And those centers for the book are charged with responsibility to really promote libraries, literature, reading, all of the things that we are celebrating today, not only in our own community, but statewide. And it's really, I mean, frankly, as a kid who grew up in Austin, Minnesota, who I'm thinking about my librarian, Mrs. Novotny, this morning, as I'm hearing this testimony and hearing your affirmations of this work, I am so proud that this is work that we get to do as the capital city's library, but on behalf of every single resident of the state of Minnesota. You heard earlier testimony about funding that will support the very spine and backbone of our public libraries and multi-type libraries throughout the state. That is library funding. Funding the Center for the Book is a part of the ecosystem that really makes sure that libraries remain these vital centers for our whole community, social infrastructure that can bring us all together. And so we do programming that we deliver to libraries statewide that enhances, adds on not only for people who are in the libraries, but yes, in the schools, in the communities that are in partnership with those libraries. We're really, really grateful for the history of support from the legislature, first again through this committee, most recently through Legacy. But as we emerge from the pandemic and as demand and requests for us to bring authors into classrooms, bring children's book illustrators into classrooms throughout our state, we know and believe and hope that you will see too that this is the home for the Minnesota Center for the Book. I'm going to use the remainder of my time to talk about a couple of the programs that this funding will support. And I want to assure you that one of the things that's really exciting about funding that comes from the legislature is it's a piece of a public-private partnership. Because the Friends is a nonprofit organization, we raise private dollars from corporations, individuals, foundations, even from Education Minnesota, who's one of our biggest sponsors of our work as the Center for the Book, to leverage public investment with private investment to deliver maximum results throughout the state of Minnesota. So what do those programs look like? Most notably, the Minnesota Book Awards. Minnesota has one of the state's biggest traditions of literary excellence. I mean, you think about the authors who call Minnesota home: Louise Erdrich, William Kent Kruger, Kaukalia Yang. I mean, the list goes on and on and on of the voices that tell the stories of what it means to be of and from and to be Minnesota. We run the Minnesota Book Awards annually to lift up not only the excellence of writers every year, but then to take those authors into Greater Minnesota on tours, because I can go down the street and frankly see William Kent Kruger at my corner bookstore. But what it means to bring Kaukalia Yang to Thief River Falls and be in conversation with a farmer in Greater Minnesota who has come to the library to hear the daughter of a farmer, of a Hmong refugee, talk about their shared experience as Minnesotans, this is when the magic happens, and this is when you really truly see the work of libraries in action, bringing us together as Minnesotans. So programs like that happen all year, through the Minnesota Book Awards, where we recognize excellence, then through Moving Words, which is the tour of authors to every single one of the 12 regions of the state of Minnesota that you just heard about. We also, during the pandemic, heard from our partners in public libraries statewide. I remember this so distinctly. In 2020, when the pandemic first struck, state libraries were shifting their service models like on an hourly basis, trying to figure out how are we going to show up and respond to community needs. And one of the requests we got is, can you guys help us start a statewide book club, something that will bring us together as a community and create shared experiences as we were increasingly living in isolation. So we, with support from Governor Walz and First Lady Gwen Walz, we started a program called One Book, One Minnesota, statewide book club. It's now our single largest program and not anything that we plan on ending soon. It is a virtual online book club with we pick a Minnesota book by a Minnesota author. We have a 6 to 8 week reading period for that book where every single person in Minnesota can download that book for free all at the same time. And then the program culminates in an online program with the author. So in April of 2020, when we were still trying to figure out what is Zoom, we actually started this program with Kate DiCamillo's Winn-Dixie, because of Winn-Dixie, which was in its 20th year, a book beloved by young readers. And we were crossing our fingers and we're like, I hope 1,000 Minnesotans will read this book all at the same time. Wouldn't that be amazing? And at the end of that first reading period, 20,000 Minnesotans read that book. 4,000 of them attended the online book event with Kate DiCamillo. She was blown away. We were blown away. We knew we had something. And so that program continues to this day. One Book, One Minnesota. We also support the Minnesota Writers Directory, and this is an online resource. So if you're a teacher or a librarian, a school media specialist in Greater Minnesota, if you're a book club member in rural Minnesota and you're like, you know what, I'd really like an author to come to my book club, we maintain the state's online directory of authors, contact information, the types of programs that they like to do, will they travel, will they not. We also create a document for teachers that they hang in their classroom called Minnesota Writers on the Map, so that we connect the geography of Minnesota with the literature of Minnesota and tell those stories in both a visual form and as a teaching tool for teachers. The Fireside Reading Series here at home in St. Paul brings Minnesota authors into one of our libraries for a winter Wednesday evening reading series. Many cancellations this winter, but we do those as both virtual and online programs. And then one of the things we're really fortunate to be able to do as St. Paul's Friends organization is really support the legacy of F. Scott Fitzgerald, one of our state's most significant and revered authors. We maintain Fitzgerald legacy both in context and in history. And so we have a portfolio of programs that, for frankly a very small investment through the Department of Education, hopefully through this committee's appropriation, we are committed to making good into great and to really sparking a love of reading, of literature, of libraries for kids and adults and curious people all over our state. We want to continue to be your center for the book. We can do that work better with appropriate funding, and so very much appreciate your consideration of this bill and for your time today.
Well, thank you so much for sharing all the incredible work that you have done, that this program does to ensure that we have access to literature and are stretching our minds and our thoughts and our viewpoints. And so really do appreciate the work that you're doing there. I got a few goosebump moments while you were talking. So members, any questions or comments? Senator Verbaden.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm really loving all this library discussion today, and loved what you had to say about One Book, One Minnesota. I'm more familiar with the Read Brave program in St. Paul, which I just love, and it really is a way to bring folks together around a young adult novel. It helps us have those conversations, sometimes tough conversations across generations. And I think in St. Paul, I've done a great job of connecting that to some current issues that we're facing, whether it's, racial injustice or climate change or housing insecurity. And our libraries are just amazing. So I'm loving this day. Thank you.
And if there are those out there that have never experienced the Minnesota Book Awards, you need to do that. It is awesome, it's inspiring, and it's just affirming that the level of literacy, because literacy isn't just about reading books, it's about expanding your knowledge through technology and understanding and able to converse. Please treat yourself one year or every year to the Minnesota Book Awards. It's truly spectacular, and to kind of rub elbows with some of those authors is pretty awesome. It's like going to the Grammy Award or something like that. So thank you.
Madam Chair, thank you. I will further plug that infomercial and just say that the Minnesota Book Awards is, the ceremony itself will take place on May 2nd at the Ordway. I suspect you'll still be in St. Paul, so come join us for the evening. And we also, again, another pandemic learning is that geography can be a barrier to some people's ability to participate in a program like that. And this is Minnesota's Book Awards program, and so we now have a free live stream of that ceremony at the same time. So there is no excuse for not attending, and it is a super fun night.
Thank you. Anyone else? Senator Seeberger, any last comments?
I think Ms. Burns has said it all. This is a fabulous program. I love books, and I'm just honored to be able to present this bill for the committee's consideration. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Ms. Burns.
Thank you so much.
Next, we have Senate, we don't need to. Next, we have Senate File 960, Senator Gustafson with the Minnesota Children's Museum. Senator Gustafson, when you're ready, you can begin your, would you move your bill, and then you may begin your testimony.
So moved. Thank you, Madam Chair. I am Senator Heather Gustafson. I also serve on the Ag Committee, and I just want to give a quick shout out to all the wonderful FFA kids who just joined us in the audience today. It's good to see you in your cool jackets. I'm very pleased to present SF 960. It's a bill to fund the Minnesota Children's Museum's All Play Access Program. This program helps to ensure all Minnesotans have access to the great resources the museum provides, regardless of their income. I want to thank Madam Chair and others on the committee for joining me as co-authors, for hearing all the important museum bills, and for acknowledging the power of play in the development of our young people. If you remember one thing from today, know that 100% of the funding requested in this bill, which has not been increased since 1997, is used to provide free and reduced access to the museum for low-income families. Even with this proposed increase in funding, the state's portion of this critical access program is less than 50% of what the museum spends every year to provide access to those who otherwise would not be able to attend the award-winning displays and groundbreaking programming. And I am sitting here as one of the families that benefited from this. At a time in my life when the cost to attend the Minnesota Children's Museum was out of reach for our family's budget, we took advantage of the discounted rates, and my children got to go to the Children's Museum under a program at the library, which gave kids tickets if they read a certain amount of books. So throwback to our last two bills and how these programs directly help families, including my own. With me is Bob Ingracia, the Vice President for External Relations for the Minnesota Children's Museum, who will, after a short video, give a really quick presentation on the legislation and what it means for those communities that otherwise would not have access to one on Minnesota's most treasured institutions. Thank you.
We love the Children's Museum because
everybody wants to play.
Because everybody wants to play and have a good time.
I have been a member since I was a little girl here, since I was about 5 years old, so probably about 16 years now. All the kids are smiling, they're laughing. You see kids interacting with kids that they've never met before. You see kids interacting with adults. The environment is all around just very positive and happy.
My son just like squealed when we walked in here. He definitely feels free here, which is fun, and I don't worry about him like getting into something he's not supposed to. So it's nice to just like let him go crazy and just be him.
It's really nice to have them, playing with kids of all backgrounds. They're learning to communicate and learning to share and take turns and be patient while they wait for the slides. So there's a lot that they are learning.
We're probably here at least once a week, and just having him be able to interact with other kids. And I really like how the museum, that you guys change out the exhibits so much, so there's new things for him to experience, and we really enjoyed that.
A lot of what we've been looking for are activities for the kids to do that are not screens, but that are, especially in the winter and then in the dog days of summer when it's quite warm, things for them to do that are safe, that are creative, engaging, but are screen-free.
Over the last couple of years, it's been way too much screen time, so this has been a great outlet for us to get away and get some more healthy interaction with the people and with, just some playtime. Just her imagination has gone through the roof.
There's always something new and exciting. They're happy, they're engaged, they're having fun and learning without realizing it.
It's a great place to interact with kids our age and to learn and grow.
We love the Children's Museum because it's a place for all of our kids and all of their interests.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody. See ya. See you later, alligator.
We love the Children's.
Watch it again.
I think we could watch that a second time. I look around, everybody's smiling, and like I said, I just wanted to wave back at the end. It was so real. Thank you for sharing that with us. It's certainly uplifting and inspiring. And so, Mr. Ingracia, would you please share your name with us, and then you may begin your testimony.
Great, yes, I'm Bob Ingracia. I'm Vice President of External Relations at Minnesota Children's Museum. Thank you, Senator Gustafson, for sponsoring this bill. And I just wanted to say a little bit about, on the video there, we didn't recruit those families in advance. We literally just set up our camera in the museum one day and then asked people if they wanted to say a few words about their experience, and that's what we got. So, and what you hear there really, right, is the joy and the fun and the engaging nature of play. And you see it come through with the parents recognizing that that's what's happening at the museum. So I wanted to just talk a little bit about the museum and the mission and how important really it is to provide access to the museum and playful learning for all Minnesota families. So the museum, in the more than 40 years that Minnesota Children's Museum has been around, has been delivering on its mission of sparking children's learning through play. And it's a broad reach, and it truly is all across Minnesota. More than 400,000 visitors per year. And it's a very diverse audience, as you can see on the chart there on the screen. We really truly do reach all of Minnesota and welcome all families. I'm gonna have to learn Right, so you heard a little bit about it in the video there. Certainly, we all know that play is fun, play is joyful. Kids are smiling, families are smiling, they're making lifelong memories when they play. What's not always as evident, or what's always not always as top of mind, really, is how important and critical play is in every child's development. You see a quote there on the screen from the American Academy of Pediatrics, not just from a couple years ago, that the importance of play in childhood development really can't be overstated. And it's really just fundamentally important for how children learn and grow and develop the skills they're going to need to thrive today, tomorrow, throughout their entire lives. And especially the kind of play that is open-ended, activities that are child-directed, you know, where a kid really gets to drive the experience, pursue their own interests, follow their own whimsy, and explore. And these are activities that the adults are maybe there to guide, but they're not directing or controlling the experience or dictating the outcome. It's really an opportunity to test things out, to try new things, to make mistakes, to figure out what went wrong or why something happened the way it did, make adjustments, think critically. All of that happens when children are playing. And you can see some of the skills that at the museum we talk a lot about that are being developed when kids are playing. They're developing critical thinking, creative thinking. They're collaborating, growing in their confidence, and their coordination. So really so much is happening with something that sometimes just seems like an afterthought, or maybe it's just kind of a frivolous type thing. It's not frivolous at all. It's super important. And that's the kind of experiences that were specifically designed to happen at Minnesota Children's Museum every day. And so again, like I said, I mean, it's super important to make sure that income is not a barrier for families that otherwise might not be able to afford to attend. And so for many years, the museum has been committed to ensuring that income is not a barrier. And one of the main programs, the biggest one, is really our All Play Access program. And this provides free or steeply discounted tickets and annual memberships to income-qualified families throughout Minnesota. And you can see the program has grown quite a bit. You can see how broadly it draws from Minnesota. Those stars on the map there are the locations of Head Start and early Head Start providers. Every Head Start and early Head Start family that's with those partner organizations automatically qualify for a free annual membership at Minnesota Children's Museum, meaning they can visit as much as they'd like for a year at no cost. And you can see that the diversity of our All Play attendance is a very diverse audience, so it really does reach a very broad group. More than 40,000 visits coming to the museum through the All Play Access program each year. And you know, we get a lot of great feedback. I mean, families are very appreciative. You heard some of it in that video. Here's a quote about from an All Play visitor who had never been to the museum before and was just really thrilled at how engaged their child was and how appreciative they were that this opportunity was there. So as I mentioned, the growth in the program has been extraordinary, more than 1,000% since 1997 when the museum first received state education funding. You can see the growth in the program. There's some ups and downs there. We had a expansion renovation project that we completed there in 2016 and 2017 that affected the attendance. We were closed for a while. And then, of course, a big dip during the pandemic. But as you can see, the rebounding in the museum attendance and the number of families able to experience the museum through the All Play program has rebounded back over to the level you see there on the chart. And just wanted to talk there too about during this period, as the senator mentioned, the funding to help support the costs of the All Play program has been essentially flat since 1997. So this is the context of the expenses related to the All Play Access program. You can see on the part of the chart there that talks about the overall cost, expenses related to the program and All Play Access attendance, and what state support in this bill would do. I mean, it really is a critical component to the sustainability of being able to provide free and steeply discounted admission to the museum. So that's why the museum is seeking this additional funding. Again, a critical component to ensuring that really everybody gets to experience the power of play that happens every day at Minnesota Children's Museum. So I thank you for your time.
Thanks so much for that presentation. Members, do you have any questions or comments? I have a feeling there are many of us that took our children to the Children's Museum over time and experienced that kind of wonderment and play, and appreciate the opportunity for our families to be able to do that regardless of their ability to pay or not. So thank you very, very much. Any last comments? All right. Senator Gustafson, anything to end up your hearing here?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I wanted to also mention too that this is a destination museum, so a lot of folks who come in for, to visit in the cities and maybe make it like their weekend getaway with the family, this is something that they partake in too. So it's just a good place. It was sort of the highlight of my kids' summer. This is what we always look forward to, and I would just encourage your support. Thank you.
Thank you. With that, I will renew the motion and put this aside for possible inclusion in our omnibus bill. Thank you. And I see that all these blue jackets are popping up in the back as you leave. I just want to say thank you for coming into our education committee. These are FFA, Future Farmers of America students. And while it might be an agriculturally centered program, we know that amongst all of these young students here are our leaders of tomorrow. Not just in agriculture, but perhaps we have some state legislators in the room that we will see up here at one day. But I know that with their leadership and their dedication to expanding their life experiences and their education, we have not seen the last of them. So thank you for coming and joining us here. All right, next we have Senator Putnam's Senate File 1751. Hear a little bit more about museums.
Thank you, Madam Chair and members. I do want to complain just briefly that the entire audience just left right as things were about to get fun. Members, you've already heard a little bit about children's museums. This is a continuation of that conversation. What you have before you is a very simple bill, Senate File 1751. And I'd like to kind of take as read the presentation that you just heard that demonstrated how important a children's museum is for a child. But members, let's not forget, it's pretty cool for parents too. Many of you probably remember when your kids were pretty small and you just needed a break. You just needed to take a breath. So you took your kids to the Children's Museum and your kids got to play with other kids. They got to learn. Members, Children's Museums are alternatives to today's iPad. It's a much soulful, more healthy way to keep kids busy while parents breathe. Opportunities for parents to talk to other parents while their children learn and do things in public. Children's museums serve a tremendous public good. I'll tell you, I did that. I used to drive in from St. Cloud just to go to the Children's Museum. And there was two benefits that way. One, my kids would sleep on the way down, so I got 45 minutes of sanity. And then I got to play with them, watch them play with other people. Members, children's museums are a fundamental public good. And I hope that as you look at this bill and the other bills you're hearing today, you understand, appreciate, and support what children's museums do for our communities. Now, the bill before you is incredibly simple. It's basically just a price tag. What we're looking at is giving $50,000 each year for a series of children's museums throughout the state of Minnesota. Base funding is currently in place for Duluth and the Minnesota Children's Museum and Rochester. These are the other 10 museums who receive no E12 funding. Now, these resources can go to some really basic things: scholarships for annual family memberships, free family day passes, school visits, free or reduced admission, and transportation for school groups. Everybody loves a field trip. I would add, members, that 3 of the children's museums that you see on this list are brand new. These resources will help them establish their viability in their communities, help them establish relationships with the school districts in their communities, and help them develop at the early stage the kinds of strength that it's going to take to give back to their community for a long time. Now, I have with me today my pal Cassie Miles from the Greater Minnesota Children's Museum, and she'd like to tell you a little bit about what this bill could do for her museum and our community.
Thank you so much, Senator Putnam. Let's see here. Ms. Nestler, if you would like to introduce yourself for the record, and then you may begin.
Hi, I'm actually Cassandra Miles. I'm here for the Great River Children's Museum.
I am so sorry.
No, that's
I'm
okay.
I'm on the wrong bill. There
Not
you
a
are.
problem.
Thank you.
Yes. Thank you, Chair Kunesh, and thank you, Vice Chair Gustafson and members of the committee, and thank you, Senator Putnam, for authoring this bill. My name is Cassie Miles, Executive Director of the emerging Great River Children's Museum in St. Cloud, Minnesota. I am proud to be here today representing the Greater Minnesota Children's Museum Coalition, a group of 10 children's museums from Duluth, Breckenridge, Mankato, Grand Rapids, St. Cloud, Fergus Falls, Hutchinson, Wilmer, Baxter, and Bloomington. We are working together to promote the proven developmental and educational benefits of safe, dynamic play environments for kids and families. We are seeking to be included in base MDE funding alongside the other children's museums of St. Paul, Duluth, and Rochester. Our request seeks $500,000 per annum from the Department of Education to be granted equally, $50,000 per each of our 10 coalition members each year, a small amount for a really large impact through field trips, programs, and access initiatives. To state that play is critical to the healthy development of a child would be a true but incomplete statement. 80% of a child's brain development occurs within the first 3 years of life, which means that learning how to learn is a skill nearly fully developed by the age of 3. After that time, it's a remedial effort that doesn't achieve the same benefit. By age 5, 90% of brain development has occurred. Children's museums serve children from birth through age 10 or later, when play and the bonds built through play with adult caretakers, their peers, and their siblings is one of the only tools proven to build a strong foundation for lifelong mental and physical health and learning. Through exposure to diverse positive play experiences, children's museums act as vital precursors to K-12 education and a strong complement to curriculum-based learning through pre-K, kindergarten, and elementary school. Each year, tens of thousands of children access children's museums through school field trips and for specialized programming for families who are most in need of it. Our museums focus on utilizing resources to provide access to all children, families, and schools regardless of their ability to pay. We are host sites for supervised visits and other child-serving nonprofit organizations. We are respectful, safe, and unstructured play environments that empower children and their caring adults to engage with each other in ways that other environments simply don't allow. Children's museums provide a wide range of resources for children and families and are economic drivers in the communities in which they reside. If I might, I'd like to take a moment to speak directly to the need for MDE funding for the Children's Museum in St. Cloud. Great River Children's Museum resides in a 25,000 square foot donated bank building that used to be an old chicken hatchery. It's a wonderful space. We haven't yet raised the funds necessary to renovate, but have partnered with the regional library system. Shout out to all of the people who've here today, most of them left, but partnered with the Great River Regional Library System and several others to provide programs for nearly 10,000 kids and their caring adults in their neighborhoods over the last 3 years. We've been really proud to partner with our library system to bring pop-up exhibit experiences directly to the rural communities in and around St. Cloud. Racially and economically, St. Cloud is one of the most diverse cities in the state, with over 50 different languages spoken in the local school district. Together with the surrounding rural communities, there are over 80 elementary schools, not including homeschool groups and private schools, in Great River Children's Museum's 11-county service region. These schools do not currently have the ability to take field trips to a place designed to foster cross-cultural connections, place where multi-layered play experiences are proven to reduce inequities between advantaged and disadvantaged children. And for many children, especially those in our most outlying rural settings, a school field trip may be their only chance to experience the immersive, dynamic, and inclusive play environments of a children's museum. All of this to say that sustainable funding is what will allow our children's museums to reliably offer programs, camps, and field trip opportunities so that every child across all 87 counties in Minnesota may be afforded the possibilities that I've described to you here today. Thank you for your consideration of Senate File 1751, and to the members of the Greater Minnesota Children's Museum Coalition. The MDE-based funding alongside the other children's museums will go a long way to help our families and children across the state. Thank you for your time today.
Thank you, Ms. Miles. It's just really exciting and optimistic that we have these kind of museums popping up across our state. I grew up in the Sartell, St. Cloud area, and we didn't have a museum. We had the public library, and that was about it. And so when I think about how our communities are changing, and you talked about the diversity of our communities as well, that we're able to invest in our communities to bring families and communities together in, like you said, positive, safe places, and just really, really encouraging. Members, any questions or comments? Nope. Well, Senator Putnam, any last words?
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, members, for listening attentively and for your conviction and your commitment to E12 education. This is one of those great, fantastic opportunities to not spend a whole lot of money, but do a whole lot of good. So I appreciate your support and hope that these resources can go where they need to go. Thank you again.
Thank you. And with that, I think we will lay this over for possible inclusion. And we have one more bill up. I know that our author is on her way. So if we can just take a minute and check your emails just for a second, review the information. There's a really great handout for our next hearing or testifier, and it'll just be a minute. We're waiting for Senator Nelson to show up. Members, I think what we will do is we'll wait for Senator Nelson to come in and do her part of this testifying, but we do have Heather Nessler here, and I believe you, who is the executive director of Spark. Do you have a slideshow that you wanted, or, yeah, okay, why don't we start with that? Come on up.
I don't know what a
Okay, we can help you with that, don't worry. We'll set you up.
I sent it in ahead of time, but I'm not sure. Have you seen it? She doesn't have a color. You golden. Is golden? Yeah. Okay. I'll get in touch with Jack. Okay. Okay. Yeah, that's it. I was just going to advance through it as we talk.
Where are you laughing at? Mm-hmm. Oh. Make some face.
Dudley's phone number? Who? Jack Dudley.
Yeah, 1 second.
Go ahead and sign it while we're waiting. Yep, that's perfect.
That's better.
Okay, members, if you'd like to take your seats, I will ask Ms. Nestler if you would please introduce yourself for the record, and then you can begin your presentation. We're kind of doing things backwards in this hearing, but I think a lot of us are used to pivoting and making do with what we can do here.
That's
Perfect.
what we do. That's what we do.
Here we go.
My slides actually go with my testimony, so hopefully it's okay that I just begin when I...
Yes, you begin where you are ready.
All right, well, thank you, Chair Kunesh and Vice Chair Gustafson and the committee members. I would like to thank Carla when she arrives for authoring and introducing our bill, but she'll do the introduction at the end. My name is Heather Nestler, and I am the Executive Director of the Children's Museum of Rochester, also known as SPARC. I'm here today to talk about Senate File Number 725, which would provide $50,000 in fiscal year '24 and $50,000 in fiscal year '25, appropriated from MDE. The funding would sustain initiatives funded with previous appropriations from MDE, which is access for programming, of diverse audiences. At our core, we focus on STEAM, cultural connectedness, health and well-being, and through interactive exhibits and programs in our collaborative learning environment. All right, the story of SPARC began as the pandemic was ramping up locally. We opened our doors in August 2020, expecting to serve around 40,000 visitors in our first year. Now, just over 2 years later, we have engaged with more than 150,000 visitors, with 70,600 of them in the past year alone. Our economic development region serves a population of nearly 520,000 people. And while our admission has grown by 87% between 2021 and 2022, we clearly have more families to reach. Even still, we want to celebrate that last year we served individuals from 81 counties in Minnesota. And access to our museum, which means free or reduced admission fees, has increased by 1,600% since August 2020. This is an expense we incurred from our general operations budget. 1,600% we're very proud of.
We are a unique children's museum. Throughout the year, we have implemented more than 750 hands-on programs in our space with more than 200 community partners. As the director of Spark, my personal mission is to continue to find ways to serve more families, all families in our community and region. This year, we are pleased to partner with organizations like the American Indian Education Department from Rochester Public Schools, ACLA, which is the Alliance of Chicanos, Hispanics, and Latin Americans, the Pamoja Women, a group that exists to empower the women and girls of East African heritage, the Ronald McDonald House, which serves as a safe haven for families and children with devastating illnesses, Families First Head Start, and more. We provide enrichment, special accommodations, and most importantly, free access to our museum for organizations like these in our community. We intentionally focus on childhood screening and parent education so that the youngest members of our future generation learn about and receive interventions and support. In other words, we wrap around the whole family and all families. With the continued appropriation with funding from MDE, Spark could sustain our programming efforts and allow us to continue focusing on access to children and families that are in need of enrichment. The slide above talks about our Play for All program, which the other museums also had a chance to explain to you, their Play for All or their all access programs. And that is essentially free access to the museum. We aspire to introduce our families to rich cultural traditions and diversity in arts and language. With programs like Traditions Around the World, Sign Language Storytime, and exploration of different art mediums, just to name a few, which are well on their way to gaining steam, we have a successful foundation to build upon. Children's museums have become an even more critical community asset, serving families needing educational opportunities outside of the home and school. We see a tremendous need in our community, and we do not anticipate this need subsiding. In fact, we expect 100,000 visitors this year, with approximately 20% of those visitors accessing the museum with free or reduced admission, because the need in our community is so great. It's our duty to see this gap is filled, and I thank you for your time and consideration of SF 725, and welcome, Senator Nelson, and thank you for authoring our bill.
Welcome, Senator Nelson. It's a busy time, I know, so thank you for hustling to get over here and joining us. Before you begin, would you, let's get Senator Westland, would you make a motion to move Senate File 725?
Yes, Madam Chair, I would like to move that file.
Thank you, Senator Westland. And then Senator Nelson, if you would like to just maybe introduce your bill to us and let us know what you have in mind for us.
Thank you, Madam Chair. First, I apologize for my delay. There's no excuse, and I appreciate the indulgence of you, Madam Chair, and the committee. Madam Chair, it's great to be before you and the Senate Education Finance Committee. I want to thank Heather Nestler for her very capable explanation. So the Sparks Museum, and I also want to thank my co-sponsor, Senator Bolden, is also a co-sponsor here. And as you know, as education members, the importance of learning through play. Those are what our children's museums do. And I believe Ms. Nestler covered the great strength of the Rochester Children's Museum. And it's pretty remarkable, actually. I'll just tell you just a little bit that isn't really on my notes here, but I think it's important. It's important for children's museums in general. You know, we've seen so much change in the last few years, not just COVID related, but even before that, as far as the buildings that are being reused or repurposed in different ways. As people, the office space, there just isn't as much need for office space. People are working remote. And the other thing we found is there's a lot more e-commerce. And so our retailers, our malls particularly, are changing into destination activity malls, much more so than necessarily just retail malls. And people are coming to the malls. And one of the things, for things such as the Sparks Museum, the Spark Children's Museum, and that's one of the things that is such a joy to see how packed and crowded that is with kids, their parents, their child care folks, just learning through play. The exhibits change out. It's truly remarkable. And I also think it's a remarkable reuse of existing space. rather than building a brand-new building, let's lease from a mall that has space for lease where people are already there. And what I have found in observing Spark, I was just there on Sunday, actually, it appears a lot of men, dads are there perhaps with their young kiddos, and maybe the rest of the family is out shopping, it's hard to say. But what I think the Education Finance Committee wants to know is how important this is in preparing kids, one, to love learning. Have to have a love for learning, and it starts with exhibits like you see at Spark Museum. And one of the things that is so important, they do a remarkable job with support from the community, but we want to expand the number of scholarships that we can provide for children whose families might not be able to pay for a membership or to attend. The bottom line is we need to get more kids who might not have this opportunity to experience the joy of learning, the fun of learning, and that's one of the things that this committee can do. So thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Senator Nelson, for your obvious energy and positive thinking around this. I'm sure that the community of Rochester, with it being a destination city itself, are really pleased to have this kind of opportunity for families that are visiting from out of the country sometimes, out of state, as well as the local economy. So thank you very much. Members, any questions or comments? All right, any final words, Senator Nelson?
Thank you,
did a
Madam
great
Chair.
job.
You've been very generous. I just want to make sure, because I don't know if it was covered, if you know the far reach of the Spark Museum, where people come from all across the state, internationally, but what we really want to focus on here is how can we get more of our Minnesota kids having an experience at Spark, and we can do that, I think, through things that you can help with, which will allow the museum to provide more scholarships so more kids have this ability to attend. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Nessler, for your presentation. And with that, I think we will consider laying this over for possible inclusion in our omnibus bill. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, members. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Yep. So members, that concludes our hearings today. This evening, there is a education policy hearing if any of you are double dipping in education. Tomorrow, we have we have Senator Gustafson up with her general education basic formula bill. We have early scholarship program with Senator Mayquade. We have, I'll be presenting the voluntary pre-K and school readiness plus program. Senator Lucero is going to talk a little bit about our American Indian education aid, and then that will bring us up to Thursday. So thank you for being here this bright early morning, and we will see you tomorrow morning. Thank you. This meeting is adjourned.